I treat my real estate team, even though I am a broker, I'm also an investor, I treat my team as an investment office where I personally make an offer on every single property that we come across. Okay, so I'm making between 10 and 50 offers a day. And basically, on every single lead we generate, I make an offer.
Right.
Now, the reason why I do that is because we are taught when you get a lead to list the property for sale. And that's been the corporate mantra for a very long time, and it's passed down from generation to generation, per se. And what I have found as someone who, look, I was in the resi business, did well over 100 transactions a year at my peak and got super burnt out. A lot of my business was investor business. And what I found was actually incredibly useful was that when I got a lead, looking at it from the lens of an investor first and saying, where is my guy probably going to be at? And then just proposing an offer of where I already know these guys are going to be at, engaging the seller's level of interest at that price, but not excluding the idea of possibly listing it for sale because I'm a broker. That's an option, but it's just not the first option. I want to gauge motivation and tread lightly around it and make an offer and propose an offer of a price range which I already know that an investor is probably going to say anyways. But what happens is that most real estate agents, even if you have a bunch of buyers, very seasoned guys, they're talking to a seller, they kind of give them a range of value. And then they end up having to wait for their investor to give them an offer, and the investor's going to want a lot more information. And sometimes you wait a week, 2, 3 to get all the information enough to bring it to the buyer. Then the buyer needs to look it over and talk to the lender to do the whole back and forth. And it might take a month to get an offer on a property. So I just do it within 24 hours. I already know where they're probably going to be. I've done this, at this point, thousands and thousands of times. And I have a very good understanding of where they're going to already tell me in 1 month's time, once they have all the information, have all the conversations, where they're probably going to need to be. Why don't I just say that day one so I can close that time loop? Where instead of most brokers taking 2 weeks, 3 weeks, months, I'm taking 24 to 48 hours to get a response. Now, obviously, a lot of the times, it's not like they're going to desperately be interested in selling 100% of the time, right? Like they're going to, but I want to gauge their motivation. So that's why I do that. Now my agents are making the offer in my name. They don't know me, right? So like I'm still a buyer to them. Right now, obviously, when you're by yourself, you need to be conscious of like, I would have an investor that you can work with and say like, hey, I'm just going to be making a bunch of lowball offers in your name. Are you okay with that? I wouldn't start with that, but as you build a relationship with them, that's essentially what I recommend for people in your shoes. And sometimes even if you're just doing it verbally, you don't even need to, they don't really care who's the buyer? Well, his name's John Smith. It doesn't really matter. You can say, for you could say me, right? Like you could say, oh, his name's Henry, he's a local guy here in Florida, whatever. I do that just to gauge motivation because I don't need to wait a month to know how motivated these people are. That's the premise, right? Like I basically look at it like, don't just look at business through the lens of a broker, even though you are one. It's investor first for long-term investment. Then you look at the investment as a short-term flip, right? If I can buy it at a great deal, like I have a warehouse right now, seller wanted 1.5 million. I have one of my brokers taking a 6% commission on the 1.5. I have it locked up at 1.5. We have a buyer at 1.8. So I'm locking it up at 1.5. I'm double closing on the deal to sell it for 1.8 million. And then we're making a commission on the back end. Instead of making a 6% commission on 1.5 million or a 3% commission on 1.5 of 45 grand or something like that, right? We're going to make 300,000. But it's like, this is why I say it's very, very important. You look at it from every angle and see where the box fits. So that's one. Two, let's talk about finding opportunities, both seller and buyer. The simplicity, similar to residential, circle prospecting certain specific asset classes at certain specific price points in certain specific locations, right, is typically how you're going to find opportunities. You are going to pay for it in time or you're going to pay for it in money, okay? When you're trying to, when you're quote prospecting, you can look at it like, it's like, I try to just make it very simple. I'm a Jersey guy. I talk fast. I curse a lot. Like, it's just how I am, where it's like, to get opportunities in this business, there's only so many ways to do it. You're paying for leads one way or another, whether it's time or money. And for me, I got into cold calling basically my second year in the business, and I haven't stopped since. And it's worked for me ever since. And look, we only convert at maybe 0.5% of all the deals that we're doing, but we have, we're doing 100,000 plus calls a month. That 0.5% adds up, right? And I think it's just important to realize, like, if you do 2 hours of prospecting, I don't care if it's cold or warm, the point is 2 hours of prospecting bare minimum every single day, and sometimes even 6 or 7 days a week, depending on what your pipeline looks like. That will keep you in business forever. So when it comes to prospecting commercial, it's very similar to the resi business. It's just I would get very specific with the list you're pulling, right? So if you're going through Reonomy, do you have Reonomy, by the way, or did you get that?
No, I don't have Reonomy.
Okay.
I have, and I'm not totally happy with it, but it sucks because I'm logged into it for a little bit now, is I have CREsync. So they have like a new saying where you can
It's
pull
okay. Look, similar. I wouldn't say it's a bad software. I think
Yeah.
I think it's a lower grade of Reonomy essentially, but it's
Yeah.
very similar. So the biggest thing I could recommend is, do you have any experience or at least mental knowledge? Experience can be lightly, right? Experience can be, doesn't mean you have sold 20 properties as an example. It could just be, I
Right.
have a decent level of understanding of any specific asset class specifically.
Yeah, I mean, I think I have a good handle on retail,
Okay,
just because, and obviously being around my dad and uncle so much,
cool.
I can hold the conversation with somebody about commercial properties and talk cap rates and all the rest of it without sounding like a moron.
Perfect.
Uh,
Retail would be a good place to start then.
yeah.
So when you're pulling a lead list, you pull the specific asset class of retail.
Yep.
And the big thing I always like to stress, especially when I'm just working with somebody brand new on this kind of thing, is
Mhm.
expand your geographics. Do not be afraid to go much farther out than you realize, because there's so little business in your little pocket where you live.
Yeah.
It's impossible to make a lot of money. It's impossible. And a lot of brokers get very stuck in their little area. Like, I have some friends of mine who are great brokers, been in the business 30 years, make $500,000 to $1 million a year, but they're one county brokers. You're screwed. Like, you can only make so much money, and when the market contracts, you're really screwed, because now you might be making $1 million a year when the market's fantastic, but when the market contracts, you're making 300 grand a year, and you're going to be like, oh man, there's not enough business out there. I'm like, yeah, you're selling in one freaking county, dude. There's only so many deals. Like, even if there's 100 transactions in your county, 200 transactions in your county per asset class, maybe, right? Depending on your size of your market, and it's just tough, right? And it's like, you're not going to get 10% market share. Yeah, and just keep that in mind, right? So I like to do statewide no matter what I choose to do. Everything just my base level statewide. So keep that in mind. And also, even for the beginning, I would even try to say maybe go tri-county, go 3, 4, 5 counties first instead of going statewide, because obviously you running out to Jacksonville is going to be a pain. Like, we have a few deals we're working on in Jacksonville right now. For us to tour it, it's near impossible, right?
Right. Yeah, Jacksonville's a hot commercial market though right now, surprisingly.
We have a huge retail deal out there that I just got. So once we have it locked, I'll keep you posted. We
Yeah.
maybe have a buyer for it. Yeah, I would definitely expand geographically, and then also keep in mind that when you're calling, I would never prospect properties if you can sort by tax record or like tax amount. Anything below $10,000 or $15,000 is just not worth your time.
Yeah.
You're calling a $600,000 property. You might as well just do residential deals. Just keep in mind that, like, I would try to do a bare minimum, like, really focus on like the 2 to 10 million, 2 to 20 million range. Even like the 1 to 10 million, like, it's just in that range, you're going to be in a much better place than you trying to do like the $70 million deals and the really tiny ones. Because, like, we're in this industry for multi 6-figure checks. We're not in this industry to make 20 grand. And then the other thing before I go to buyers is, keep in mind that as someone who I also, again, transitioned from the residential business at a high level, keep in mind, if your money is earned from resi, you cannot stop doing resi business. Like, there are some guys where it takes you 12 to 24 months to earn your first check in commercial.
And I think that, I laid that out like a little bit when we chatted just over Instagram DMs, like, obviously my goal on the residential side, I'm closing in. I just went pending on one. So I'm about 4.6 million closed year to date on the residential side. I want to get north of 10 million on the residential side. Commercial, it's like, I just want to get a deal done. If I can get a commercial deal done, then I know I can get my feet wet and still focus, 80% on my residential side, 20% on my
I was going to say the exact same. So, like, maybe one day we can prospect commercial.
And then eventually, hopefully, that flips and becomes
just keep in mind that, like, I would probably, and look at it for like the next few years, probably 3 years minimum, you're going to be doing resi a large portion of your business. And by the way, the strategy of when you're prospecting and what you're working on works in resi too. Because, like, if your average price point right now is like what, 5, 6, 700 grand?
Yeah, I think 700. I had a couple, like, I had like a 2 point something and a 1.5, so it brought up my average.
That's great. I was even going to say, like, I think that, keep in mind that people don't often pay attention to where they're prospecting. They're just prospecting to prospect. And you might as well prospect in the 1 to 2 or $3 million neighborhoods, because it's the same exact work.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Because the only way to go from, like, again, like 10 million to 20, 30 million a year as a solo agent is really doing higher price point. Like, I was doing 100 transactions a year to do 50 million, which is just stupid. That was just my market, and I wasn't cognizant of, like, prospecting the luxury areas. If I would have done nothing, I literally, if I would have just doubled my average price point, I would have netted twice as much money, right? It's just, people don't pay attention to that piece. And I paid attention to that way too late in my career.
Okay. Yeah. That's good to know.
And then let's talk about buyers for a second. for commercial. Keep in mind the following. Your game plan in the commercial world is that you're going to be building lists of buyers per asset class and per location. Because you're eventually, what's going to happen is that most buyers buy in pockets, right? They buy in pockets of asset class. They buy in pockets of geographic location. They buy in pockets of returns. So you know, they're like, oh, okay, I have a retail center, this square footage in this location. These people want to buy that. It's not like if someone goes, oh yeah, I buy retail all over the state of any asset, of any size, any cap
Right.
rate. No one says that. They might tell you that, but that's just not what they've bought. They buy to and I also like to say that past is the biggest predictor of the future when you're working with a buyer. Because everyone in the world will tell you they're an investor, dude. Everyone will.
Right.
How many
Yeah.
properties have you bought in the last 12 months? What did you buy in the last 12 months? Talk to me about those deals. Why did you buy those deals? What did you see possible in those deals? And I like to make sure hey, if this guy bought 3 properties in St. Pete, right? They were all 10,000 to 30,000 square foot shopping centers, and they were all 80% occupied or higher, and they were all 7.5% cap rates or better. That's what he's going to buy again, right? So it's but people go oh, well, I have this deal and I can't sell it. I'm like, okay, talk to me. They're selling the wrong deal to the wrong buyer. It's of course they don't want it, or they're offering you, 50 cents on the dollar because they don't buy that product. Similar to your development deal. It's okay, look, ready? It's if I wanted to sell a development deal and I have no development clients, I would literally call every single person who's bought a development property in the last 12 months locally, and or just literally Google developers in St. Petersburg as whatever, right? And just look up all those people, give them a call and say, hey, just wanted to get connect with you and see what kind of product you buy. I come across a lot of development opportunities. I'd love to put you on my list for for buyers to reach out to when I get something. And then, oh, by the way, I also have this deal. I don't know if you've saw it, seen it, love to get your feedback. It's actually my uncle who owns the property, so I have a direct line of communication with them. You know what I'm saying? So you kind of bring that in there, but that's a really simple place to start. And then with Reonomy, I don't know if CREsync does it because I don't really use CREsync personally, so I don't want to talk out of guessing.
Yeah, I never even heard of Reonomy until Brandon brought it up, and then I did a little bit of research. And I was like, damn, dude, these CREsync guys fucking got me at the right time. Where I was like, oh yeah, it's fine, I'll get it. Seems cool. I didn't even know that Reonomy was the thing. Seems a little bit better, but
I've done the same thing. Don't worry. So with Reonomy though, you're able to sort by owners of who's bought properties in the last 12, 24, 36, whatever. You could see everybody's property, who the owners are, who's bought product in X location, X asset classes, anything within X period of time. I go to that list and I go, hey, I just got a property in this location, this is the details of it. I'll reverse look up that information and then go to the owners of people who just bought stuff just like it within the last 12 months. It really is that simple. And then the last thing I'll say for buyers is with commercial specifically, the cool part about it is that you can prospect, and I'm sure you even heard this yesterday because it happened a few times, where they say no to selling, which is, again, very common, but you can flip the conversation to a buyer conversation. Because a lot of investors are, if they're not a seller, they're probably a buyer.
Yeah, I heard that yesterday with I think Eddie. It was Eddie.
With Eddie, yep. Exactly.
Yeah, you said flip them to a buyer, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. And that was where I was thinking. I was like, well, is that how I was imagining that's at least some portion of
100%.
Yeah. Okay.
Because think about it, the cool part about our lists when you're prospecting, let's just say you're prospecting for sellers, because that's the name of the game, right? We prospect for sellers. During that calling session, right, you're prospecting through it. You're able to rip through a list and you're asking about seller. As soon as it's a no, you flip it to a buyer. And as soon as that's maybe a no, you can flip it back to a leasing conversation, right? So there's multiple facets of how you can do business with one person, even if they say no to this. They say no to this. They say no to this. Right. You can keep moving down the totem pole.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, and the one thing that's been interesting in my very limited experience, just chatting with other commercial guys in St. Pete, is even if it's not a better deal, everyone feels like it's a better deal if it's off market. And so if you have off market opportunities, if you send them a listing, hey, here's my listing, check it out on loopnet.com. Everybody in their brother's like, no, I don't want anything to do with it. It's been it's been passed over.
Yeah, that's right. I list nothing. You'll see nothing in my name. I list nothing. Because I look at it like this. The only time, think about how crazy this is, right? And it's very specific to commercial. The only properties that ever get listed on the open market, that means, at least in my experience, that broker doesn't have a buyer to sell their own deal, or it's not that great of a deal and they couldn't sell it on their own, even to their own buyer pool. So it's okay, well, both of those scenarios suck, which is
Yeah.
why most investors don't buy stuff that's listed on the market. 90 some odd percent of every deal listed on the market sucks. All
Right.
the great deals. You don't see a property that's selling at 50 cents on the dollar listed on LoopNet.
No. Yeah.
But that's a great investment opportunity. Those are found off market and they're traded off market, right? So it's like my team, we have well over $1 billion worth of properties off market, direct to seller access, where like I'm able to now sell those or try to sell those deals. And like you had mentioned, every investor only wants to deal with off market product.
Right.
And because it's exclusive.
Right, exactly. Yeah, that's good info. Yeah, and I think, I mean, would you say you would focus for at least the first couple months, you just go all in on one, if you're going to do retail, just focus on retail, don't be calling industrial places or
Choose one, go for it for about 90-ish days.
okay.
Spend a good amount of time in that asset class, having good conversation, understanding the game.
Yeah.
Industrial's fairly similar to retail, or at least more similar than you're going to have multifamily as an example, right?
Right. Okay.
Right. So, because what happens is, ready, when you're prospecting for retail as an example, which is a good place to start, you're going to come across maybe 2 or 3 guys over the next 90-ish days who are going to be like bigger time investors. And they'll be like, listen, we buy specifically retail and industrial. So if you come across anything interesting, let us know. Or maybe they're like, listen, I don't want to sell my retail building. And then all of a sudden they're like, I want to sell this industrial property, or I want to sell this multifamily property. And that's all of a sudden what all of a sudden shifts you into those other asset classes. So,
Yeah, and the reason I ask is just because the Tampa St. Pete area has really strong retail market, and then it's also, I was reading the other night on CoStar, it's actually one of the best industrial markets.
Oh, 100%. Actually, do me a favor when we finish up here. There's a guy named Jordan McCoy in the group who's in your market.
Oh, cool. Okay.
So I'd reach out to him. He's a new student, just came on board like a week or 2 ago. But he's got an industrial deal actually that he was actually talking to me about. Pretty interesting. But anyways, he'll be a good guy to connect with in your market.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'll reach out to him. Jordan McCoy. Cool.
What other items can I answer for you or support you with for the last 5 minutes here?
Well, yeah, I think that answers most of my questions, but I'm
Cool.
definitely excited to be in the group and continue learning.